So I convert to English. Our keynote speaker and the last speaker of our conference is one of the most experienced, knowledgeable, and legendary names in sports business industry. He is someone who worked really hard for the betterment of the industry itself and his clients. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome Phil de Picciotto to our virtual stage. Hello, Phil.
Hello, Amir, and thank you to you and to Ahmed and the entire Sportsnet group for so graciously including me in your summit. It's truly an honor to be with you in Istanbul, a place that has always been renowned for the dissemination of knowledge throughout world history. And may I just say hello to your audience?
Yeah, thank you very much for accepting our kind invitation. It's a great pleasure to have you here. I have some great questions for you, but I would like to leave the word to you for your initial remarks.
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon to all of you. I had hoped to be with you in person, but as you know, for the second year in a row, the world is ending the year in the company of an unresolved pandemic, which is becoming endemic. The conventional wisdom before COVID was that a universal threat would cause the world to unite in fighting a common challenge. But this virus has reminded us that people think differently, believe in different things, are educated differently, consume very different media, live in very different social, cultural, and economic environments, and often make their own decisions based on their own circumstances, backgrounds, and worldviews. But I'm pleased that one thing remains undeniably true and unchanged. While sport is a microcosm of that differentiated world, it is also a powerful platform to bring people together, to unite us, to speak a common and universal language, and therefore to serve as a connecting point and an important pillar for world diplomacy. Sport exports its influence instantly, objectively, meritocratically, and globally. It confirms that no matter how competitive a rivalry may be, we need each other on the same stage. It reminds us how quickly things can change and that no outcome is certain in life, even if one is better and does the right things. It emphasizes the importance of fitness and good health, physical, emotional, and mental, for quality of performance in sport and also for quality of life itself. It illustrates the importance of having rules and standards so long as they allow individual flexibility to create and invent and combine assets in new and exciting ways. And it showcases the power of teamwork and collaboration, dedication and commitment, passion and expertise. So, Amir, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you today about all of these areas, and I will leave it to you to lead our conversation.
Thank you, Phil. I mean, I don't think there's any better way to explain the whole philosophy of sports industry. And I know you studied anthropology. Maybe your approach feels like you've actually see human behavior and sports and somehow put them together in a very harmonious way. And I would like to start with the history a little bit. You founded Octagon. It was then Advanced International in 1982. And now Octagon has 50 offices in 22 countries, more than 1,000 employees, and it's giving services in many different areas. How did Octagon become the agency that it is today?
We certainly didn't have a plan to become big, and size is still not our objective. We're trying to have the most influence. We started very small. We wanted to be very true to our clients and their needs, but we kept saying yes to people. So as with any investment, time is a great ally. And over the last 4 decades, we've just continued to build brick by brick on the foundation that we started back in the early 1980s. And Amir, I would say that there are 4 basic elements to that foundation. The first is expertise. We decided that we were going to stay in those areas where we were very knowledgeable, where we could be the best in the world. We didn't want to be just average. We wanted to be able to help people by being exceptional in the areas where they needed us. And from the very beginning, we were passionate. You know, it's not enough just to know something. You have to be willing to dedicate yourself to talking about it and to building upon it. So our team is really dedicated, really committed. We call it passion. And then third, reliability and consistency. I like to say that we're boringly consistent. I hope we're not really boring, but we are always going to be our own brand. We're going to be known to people for our brand. We're going to be honest and fair and transparent. And finally, it really takes a village these days to do anything globally. So collaboration is very, very important. So I think those are the 4 reasons that enabled us to continue to grow and to still be here today.
I mean, so being a global agency requires so many different elements. Like you have to know the local dynamics, you have to know the regional dynamics, and you have to all adapt that into the global dynamics. So in this sense, how do you think athlete and property management changed over time? And, you know, what is technology's role during this process?
Well, 40 years can be a very short time or a very long time. Obviously, in world history, it's extremely short. But with regard to our industry, it's actually quite a long time, and there have been many evolutions, some of them dramatic and some of them, you know, temporary, some of them very small and almost unnoticeable, but then later they became noticed. I think there are several that are worth considering. So first, you know, 40, 50 years ago, the industry was almost entirely staffed by lawyers. And that's true on a global basis. And so one change is that while lawyers are still very important, I think the key staffing in the industry has switched from lawyers to marketers, because the work has shifted really from contracts to creativity. We're now going from representation to brand building. That's a very big switch. And then, of course, the technological revolution, both from linear television and radio to cable television and then to the internet, has created many differences. But one thing that's the same is that sports is not very suited for time shifting. So the recording of shows, which is so prominent in entertainment these days, or the fast forwarding through advertising, really does not apply to sports programming. So we've moved in a world where the distributors, the media distributors of the product, were in control. We could only watch what they showed us because there were very few platforms to watch. And that shifted to creators. Anyone who creates content really took the control. And I'd say more recently, actually, discovering content has become more important as a differentiator than either distribution or creation, because there's so many distribution platforms, there are so many creators out there making content, that it's now important, essential to allow people, enable people to discover that content and break through the clutter. And there's nothing better to do that than something that's live, that you really cannot time shift, where the entire world speaks that same language. And speaking of the world, I would say the fourth change that's been essential to the growth of sports is globalization. You know, the world is bigger and more open than ever. There's a bigger middle class in more places than ever. There's more travel and interchange of information and communication than ever. And I think that that's all going to continue.
I think you pointed out really important stuff. And I would like to take those points onto my next question, which is the relationship between brands and athletes and slash sports properties. Because The way we consumed content in the past, it was mostly one way. Now, like you said, we have interactive platforms where brands can actually engage with the audience, and where athletes engage with the audience with the brands. And how does this impacted brand partnerships from athletes' perspective and from sports property perspective?
Amir, I think you're exactly right. It's really about the depth of engagement that a brand can have with its audience and consumer base that's critically important. So when we look at this industry, I think that the shift has been, maybe to state it a little bit too dramatically, from isolation to integration. It used to be that a brand might buy advertising on television or might have a sponsorship at an event or maybe an affiliation with an athlete, though that was less the case some decades ago. Over time, there's been more power and influence given to athletes. So the relationship between a celebrity performer and a brand is more equalized. The athlete delivers big stages, a very broad media communications platform for brands to use. And of course, athletes have become brands themselves, human brands. So in terms of product placement, they as a brand are always placed in the center of the action. They're very visible and noticeable, influential and impactful. And the interesting business developments, I think, have been the integration of a brand's ability to utilize event platforms with talent platforms, with media platforms for advertising and communicating their messages.
There are ways that brand interact with properties and athletes, and sometimes, it's just not very authentic. In this new era, how do you think brands should approach partnership with athletes and these properties?
Well, sports, again, is a microcosm of society. It is a communication platform. It's not the only platform, but the same kind of philosophies and metrics should apply when a brand is utilizing a sports platform as it is when it is using any other communications platform. Mm-hmm. So the first is understanding the audience, both what the sport delivers or the property delivers or the athlete delivers, mm-hmm. but also who is that brand's audience and how do they want to reach them, and is sport or which sport and which way in which sport is the right way, the best way, the most efficient, economical, impactful way to reach them. And that all comes from doing research, really understanding the audience, but also really understanding who's going to be your ambassador, who's going to be your platform, what can it deliver, so that your expectations as a brand are aligned with what is possible. And finding that alignment is not always easy, but it's easier than it ever has been before. There's so much information available these days that brands just need to do their research to find the right alignments. And then the last element, I would say, is risk management. Because of the enormity of the communications platform and the instantaneous, not time-shifting environment that we're in, that carries potential risks as well. So brands have to understand how to mitigate risks along with trying to capture the upside.
And I'm going to switch to the athlete's perspective. And, we see that now athletes become brands themselves. They participate in social issues and they voice out their opinions, and this makes them a brand. What is an agency's role in this process? How does an agency manage this aspect of an athlete?
Well, I think the first thing an agency does is not try to divide an athlete's brand into elements that are disparate, and to try to make sure that an athlete's brand is consistent, because that's what a brand is. Everywhere in the world where you see it or hear it, you know what it is supposed to be, and you don't want to surprise your audience by changing. So every brand element for an athlete should be integrated into the entire persona of the athlete, on the pitch, off the pitch. But the most important thing today, I think, is that athletes have a relatively new opportunity to deliver their own messages, to communicate their own brands and who they are and how they want to do that in a completely unfiltered way. You know, they no longer need their team or their league or others to create and distribute and dictate their presence. And the world at the same time wants to know who they are. It's not limited to just what they're doing on the pitch. The personalities off the pitch are very engaging to people. In fact, I think sports are the best reality show programming in the world if they're done well. And you can build huge followings which have huge value by just understanding that. That's the key to managing athletes today.
Great. You also played an integral role in the development of tennis and its image. You helped them, disassociate the tennis image from cigarette companies, for example. And now Octagon is one of the most influential stakeholders in the realm of tennis, holding 14 tournaments plus representing many tennis athletes. So how does an agency help grow tennis around the world?
Well, first, we know people like you. We're collaborating with you on the tournament in Istanbul, and as you know, Turkey has had a history of excellence in tennis, especially in the most recent decades. So it's taking a global approach, and it's finding a way to balance a consistency of a global tour or a global sport, and tennis, especially for women, has become the leading platform in the world, and everybody who plays on that platform is essentially an independent contractor. Every tournament and every player is part of a global tour that needs some kind of consistency to it because it is a brand in and of itself. So that nature of the sport of tennis played very well with who we are and what we do. We've had a global approach from the very beginning. We understand, appreciate, and respect the differentiation between people, and especially local cultures. And it's very, very interesting, I think important for the world, and also quite difficult sometimes to align a brand for global consistency at the same time that you're developing it for a local culture or within a local culture. But tennis has done that, I think, very well. We have been a leader in exporting it worldwide, expanding its platform worldwide. So it's nice of you to make your comments in that regard. And the importance of local tennis, I think, is quite clear. It is a platform that can inspire and empower. The people who can watch their heroes on television, can go to an event locally, have the opportunity to play and learn and develop, especially the young children, they can become true champions. And if you don't see anyone like you playing, or you don't see any tennis courts in your community, or you don't see any professional tournaments and opportunities to compete where you are, then you either have to leave your country, which is very unfortunate. It can separate families. It can remove you from important learning opportunities. It just kind of takes you out from your roots. Or on the other hand, if you do have that platform within your country, you see what others are doing and they can inspire you to believe that you can do the same. So I think that tennis does a real service to the world. It's becoming more and more important to do that, to kind of find the marriage between global consistency and local cultures. And we are very proud to have played a role in that.
Maybe I can add a few words to there for our tournament in Istanbul. Well, it's so easy to see how it's changing the local tennis community when you have an international tournament coming into your town. And when you are able to see all those amazing athletes on TV, in person, in flesh. And it's so easy to see how an international tournament can impact the growth of the local sport. So I had the privilege to see and witness it in the first hand. So thank you for that. I'm coming to my last question. This is more like a general question. So what would be your advice for a young sports business professional or an entrepreneur? How should he or she develop herself or himself to become successful in this industry?
Well, first I would remind that person that sports in the business sense is an application of a more traditional skill set. Sports as a career is really limited to an athlete or a coach or someone who's really intricately connected with the game, playing the game itself. But the business of sports requires some underlying education and expertise. Now, it could be someone who studies law and applies that to a job in sports, or accounting, or medicine, or psychology, or writing, or anything else. But it has to be underpinned by a real traditional skill set. So I would recommend that the person interested in becoming an entrepreneur in sport just does the best to develop that underlying skill set, and then presumably because of a passion and an understanding for sport, wants to apply it. But as you know, passion alone is not enough. As with everything else in the world, preparation is critical. If one is already working with other people, being hopeful is important. People will tend to do business, if they can, with people they like. So being likable is as important as being good at what you do, but both are critical in their importance. And if already working at a place, I would recommend trying to find an internal champion. It might be a boss, it might be someone else within the company at the same peer level or at a different level, below or above. Learn from that environment that you're in. And learning means not only doing what you see other people do, but it also means thinking how you would do it differently if you were in their job. Visualize yourself in that job and really try to understand other people's job, because that's probably the path that your career will take you.
Thank you for this amazing answer. My final question is, what's next for Octagon? Are there any new areas that the agency is exploring to enter?
Well, Amir, back in the early 80s, I had no idea where the world was going to take us, and I couldn't really create a roadmap of what we were going to enter, but I did know, and I certainly can't do it now either. I'm probably less equipped now than ever to do it, given the complexity in the world. So, a very general answer would be, I hope that Octagon as an agency will always be at the forefront of going wherever the world allows us to go, taking our clients wherever they need us to take them, wherever there are new and interesting and expanded opportunities. And that goes back to the idea that we discussed at the very beginning, where sports is a microcosm of the world. So as the world changes, sports get to change, and anyone working in the business is going to have to change with it. And those changes are happening faster than ever. And I think it's a privilege to be able to work in this industry for all of us, everybody there, with us today, in the audience as well. It's really a special time in world history, and sport can make a very big and important and positive difference. But if you look more specifically, I would say some of the trends quickly would be the inevitable convergence of the physical and the digital worlds. I think sport is very well suited to capitalize on that. Sport and we as a leading agency have to figure out how to accommodate both scale and personalization, both of those bookends. How can we do things efficiently to a bigger and bigger world, bigger and bigger audience at the same time? How can we make everybody engaged feel very special, very personal? The world is bigger and more differentiated, but as a result, we have a bigger need to connect people, and we have a bigger need to make our celebrities stand out as individuals, so they don't all look the same and act the same as each other, because in fact, they aren't the same as each other. And what a boring world it would be if they were all the same as each other. So we have to find a way to promote their differences. And then finally, I would say, data. Data is used everywhere in the world. It will be used more and more in the world. The interpretation of the data is what is going to become very important. And there will be many business-related opportunities and issues. For example, who owns an athlete's data? Does a team own the data of the players on the pitch so that they can decide who to put on the pitch for the last 2 minutes of the game? Could they use that in a contract negotiation? Or does it really belong on a proprietary basis to an athlete? And what about the health issues and concerns that are related to that? And what about the DNA that can predict whether very young individuals have a better chance than others to make it? So data for health purposes and performance purposes, I think, is going to be very important, and I hope that Octagon stays on the cutting edge of understanding that.
Well, before the beginning of this session, I was expecting that this session will be filled with incredible takeaways. I wasn't mistaken. Thank you very much for sharing these incredible insights. I would just like to ask if you have any closing remarks or messages before we end our session.
Well, I just want to congratulate you on what I understand was an outstandingly good conference and summit. You had very interesting content. You featured a lot of people and a lot of ideas, and you showcased, I think, what the breadth of the industry can be. So congratulations to you. I know it's been a long 2 days for everybody, but I hope it's been a terrific 2 days. And next time I hope to be with you in physical presence, not just in digital presence.
Thank you very much for your enormous contributions in joining to our conference. Hopefully next time we'll have the pleasure to host you here, take you out to see wonderful parts of Istanbul, and offer you some nice Turkish cuisine. And yes, thank you very much for joining us, Picciotto.
Good luck to everybody. Much success. Good health.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.